producer on one of our unannounced R&D projects.
Cool. Hi, I'm James. I'm a producer on Valorant. I've been at Riot for about 2 years. I've been in the industry for actually about 12.
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm a release manager. I work on several different projects, and I've been at Riot for about a year and a half now.
Hi friends, I'm Bobby. I am a senior producer on an R&D project at Riot. I've been in the industry since about 2007. That's it. That's me.
Hey everyone, my name is Dylan Beal. I'm a producer for the concept team that makes skins on League of Legends. I've been at Riot since the start of 2020, so like about 4 years or so. And Riot was my first industry job.
Hi, I'm Joellen Aragon. I am the Global Community Manager for Valorant. And I've been at Riot since July 2022. I am not a producer, just FYI. No, you're good.
Yeah, we're also thankful to have you guys here. I think I know a lot of people here are very curious as to know, like, did you always know that you would end? Did you always know that you'd end up in the gaming industry? And we wanted to know, like, what was the path that you took to get to where you are now? First, like, how'd you get where you are now?
I did not think I would ever get into the gaming industry. I actually, after grad school, spent 10 years in the nonprofit sector and got all the way to Associate Director of Major Gift Fundraising at UCLA. I got to that role that I really wanted, and then I still wasn't happy, and then Valorant came out. And I started trying to do things like I volunteered as the Director of Marketing for UCLA Esports for a year to beef up my resume, and then, yeah. Did not think that I would ever get to Riot. This is also my first industry job.
I guess, so when I was like super young, I grew up just like playing a ton of games, and games was like the thing I wanted to go into. And this was like early 2000s, so like DeVry University, ITT Tech, G4 TV was on. I was like, that's what I want to do. I definitely want to do this. And then I got to high school, and like I had I actually don't know what I want to do in games. I guess I'm not going to go into games. And then when I got into college, I joined my school, Penn State's esports club, and it just ignited the passion again. And then immediately was back to, I gotta work in the industry. I gotta work on games. This is my passion. And then very luckily, I had a job outside of college that was just in the tech industry, and then I was able to move into Riot after that.
Cool, yeah, I tripped and fell into video games, I think is probably the best way to analogize it. I was a theater major, working really hard to pretend that I could act, and doing speech and debate on the side and just trying to have fun, and working retail at the time in order to make ends meet. And my brother got his first industry job as a programmer at a studio in Carlsbad. It used to be called Concrete Games, they're gone now. And I was enamored by the fact that he could wear jeans to work, because working retail, you can't do any of that. And this was before you could sit down in retail. It was awful. It was really bad. So I pivoted, and I did what the only advice that you could find then about how to get into the industry is, and that was start in QA. And one of the routes for QA is into production. So back then, I started at Sony, and then eventually just kept falling face forward until I landed where I am now.
Yeah, mine was also very falling into it. I didn't think that I was going to end up in games. I'm actually grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and ended up getting my degree in English and medieval studies. And after that, I got married and went to Japan for 4 years. And while I was there, I did anime and video game journalism. I wrote some articles for Anime News Network. And when we were stationed back in the United States, we ended up in California over at March Air Reserve Base in Moreno Valley. And unfortunately, that relationship did not work out, but through the contacts I had made in the industry through press, I ended up getting a QA job at Idea Factory, which is a smaller company that does otome. I did also interview at the time for Atlas, and it was funny, the Monday that I was supposed to start, it was the Friday before I was supposed to start at Idea Factory, I got a call from Atlas, and they're like, can you start Monday? So I have to tell Idea Factory, sorry, I'm gonna take Atlas. So my first job was at Atlas Sega, and then, yeah, I ended up doing QA there for a while, and ended up in production.
Yeah, I always wanted to make games, but it seemed like unattainable. Like I didn't know how to do it or how to get in. Like it's probably a little easier now. But I was actually trained to be a lawyer, and I took the LSATs. And in between getting the results, or taking them and getting the results, my friend was working at Sony over here, and he said they need QA testers, and I was like, I'll do that, because what else am I gonna do? And then I did that for like a week, and then I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And QA is tough, but it was a way to make games or be part of the game making process. So I never even looked at my LSAT results, and then now I'm 12 years later, and I'm still in the industry. And then from there, I did QA, then I did some community management, and then I went into production, where I've been for like 6 years, 7 years.
So I guess for me, it all started like probably a lot of folks just love playing games. But for my generation, playing games, you had to really commit. There was no internet, there were no phones. It was like you had to go seek out. You had to find a computer that could work or an arcade. You had to really seek it out. And that was something that really required kind of dedication to wanting to be a gamer back then. And so that's where I kind of fell in love with gaming. And but like a lot of folks, I kind of fell out of it for a while when I went off to college. But then I realized that I found another way back towards it. And I actually was an animator for a while. And I worked in the film and TV industry. And I had a good friend of mine who said, hey, I got this job over at Electronic Arts doing animation. You know, you should check out what's going on in gaming right now. And this is, I don't know, this is a while ago, back I think 2000. So that kind of dates me a little bit. And I went over and was just blown away. And you probably laugh at the time of what gaming was like back in 2000. But for me, it was this amazing insight from a creative standpoint, the possibility of making and developing something that you could participate with your audience in a very interactive and engaging way. And I was sold right then and there that making games was so important to me that it was no turning back, going back into the film and TV industry. And at some point along the way, and making a lot of games, I loved the idea of collaborating and working with others and building something mystifying and magical. That at some point I realized to do that at the scale I wanted to, I kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of trade my creative soul for like spreadsheets and figuring out how to make things and kind of shifted out from making art to being a producer, but always with this eye of wanting to endeavor on this kind of crazy journey to develop and make games with the idea of what players were wanting. And I'd go back to the moments when I was a young player myself to today, where I still play a lot, and my kids are in the audience here. They joke that I play more games than they do right now, and it's always been that kind of passion. So that's kind of how you could kind of say a long way of falling into it.
Spreadsheets are cool.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love spreadsheets. They're just awesome. No, yeah, it's really interesting to hear like how you guys all entered the industry at different levels, different times in your lives. We're all students here, or yeah. Are you able to offer any advice to anyone looking into breaking into the industry? And then we can start with Kevin and then go back.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the biggest piece of advice I can give is have perspective. It is an industry that many people are very passionate about and pour themselves into, and as a result, it can feel overwhelming or competitive. But I will say, please keep this in mind. It might be hard to have this perspective, but you are currently living in a time where you have more access to being able to actually make a game. I used to joke that when I first got into the industry, the computer that I used was like 2 or 3 times my salary is what it cost. And just the ability to access, to be able to participate in making games is a really difficult barrier. But right now, the ability to go out and make things and create, the tools are accessible, the distribution, you can go out and put things out for people to play in a way that's never been available before. So my advice to anyone starting out is go out and make things, or find others that are making things and find a way to participate. The ability to invest yourself in that process has never been easier, and that is often the best way in. Is you'll find people asking like, so show me something that you've made, and it's not just show me that you've done a tutorial or that you followed a blueprint, but show me how you understand what it's like to invest in making games. And you have that opportunity. So that is my number one suggestion I give to anyone just starting out is don't just wait for the perfect job to line up. Obviously, there are a lot of places that you can go and endeavor in the process, but don't hesitate to go out and just be a game maker.
100% agree with that. And to add on to that, find a community that is like-minded like yourself so you can make those things if you want and you can learn from each other. The only other thing I would say is persistence. I applied at Riot 20 times before I got this position. So I've talked to people, like I have a brother-in-law who's trying to get in the industry and he applied somewhere and didn't get it. I'm like, well, didn't just wait 6 months or learn more and then apply again. And that was foreign to him. So don't be afraid to fail because you will, I guarantee it. But it's okay because you can learn from that. Just persistence and finding a collection of people that you can kind of communitize with.
I think I'd probably say don't be afraid to talk to people. I think networking is important, but do it in a genuine way out of interest and ask a lot of questions. Because I find like most of the opportunities that were presented to me were based off of relationships that I had, managed to talk to this person at E3, talk to this person at TGS, and just kept up that relationship, became friends. And then, you have that genuine connection. So when there is an opportunity, they think of, you first because you're friends with them. So I suppose just keep your mind open to talking to a lot of people and asking questions and being super genuine.
The only thing that I could add based off of what was said before with making a game is if your barrier for entry is maybe the computer science aspect of it, as a lot of production people are, feel free to make a board game. I've made a few board games. I never published them, but I made it for fun, and I learned so much more. It gave me a huge amount of empathy with the game designers that I work with. And even if you make a board game off of an IP that you love, right, you don't have to feel like you hit this whole entire friction. You can imagine, what if Riot made a board game? What if VALORANT was a board game? What if League of Legends was a board game? For me, I made a Rocket League board game, and it was just this huge exercise in learning that, again, gave me that empathy, but also helped me feel like I was making games in a way that I hadn't previously. So do that.
I guess I will echo like a couple things that have been said like before, but if you don't get like an industry job like right out of college, like that is totally okay. It is like a couple of folks have said before, it's super competitive. There's a lot of folks who have like passion just like you do, and it's totally okay to like work at a different company, like a tech company for like a couple years and then come back to games, because games aren't going to go anywhere. They're still here. And you can do a ton of stuff in the meantime to really bolster your skills. Like I believe a couple people talked about like just going out and making things, like just make your own games and stuff. And you can really get that passion out in that way before eventually making your way to like the industry job that you were kind of meant for. The other hard thing for college students is it's really rough for you all out there right now. Getting into the games industry, it's pretty tough, just in general, on top of what's going on right now. And so it could seem pretty daunting at first, but just keep trying, just keep making things, and eventually you will land where you need to land.
In addition to all that, some advice that I would give is to not discount any experience that you have gained. When I interviewed, so I write the patch notes for VALORANT, and when I interviewed for my role, one of the things that the hiring manager pointed out was I was able to translate crazy medical jargon and terms and terminology into lay terms for our donors. And so that's essentially what I do now with the patch notes. I take really complicated dev jargon and make it so that everybody who plays VALORANT can understand it.
I want to piggyback on that one and jump on it. I do improv down in San Diego, and I would never think that it was worthwhile to anybody, but it comes up in every one of my job interviews for game industry stuff, especially in the production side of things. So yeah, you might have more experience than you realize. Everything's valuable.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that like definitely like for a lot of people, it's a very big question mark just getting in. But also, we're also kind of curious about like what it's actually like while working in the industry. So, I just want to ask you some questions about like what are your like tips for maintaining a work-life balance, like while you're in the gaming industry? Because we all know that when you're in the gaming industry, you're working a lot more than a lot of other people in other industries. So how do you maintain that work-life balance if you do?
I stop going on Slack at 6:30 p.m. if I can help it. I don't try to go on Slack during the weekend either, unless somebody posts something in LAX classifieds. Yeah, it's a lot about just turning off all the work apps that I have and then going to play Valorant.
Yeah, I think it's like really great advice. Just like learn how to set boundaries and then keep them, because like not only is it going to help like when folks are interacting with you, but also like you'll help set examples for the people around you. I think like one of the things about work-life balance that a lot of people might not realize is that like you have the agency here too. So if you're like holding those boundaries and you're kind of letting people know like around you like this is not okay, like to go outside of that time, I think that's like super important. And then yeah, like make sure that you're not just overworking yourselves too. Like especially when you're in college, because you're doing classes all day, you're studying for exams coming up. On top of that, you have like all these different clubs and events that you're doing. You're just like constantly working on stuff. And when you move into like a full-time role, it's super valuable to just be able to turn your brain off for a little bit, like just a little bit, because that brain power is like super important, like once you're actually on hours.
So the agency you have that he mentions is a double-edged sword. There is personalities, and I happen to fall into one of these. An analogy so Death Stranding is a video game that features this group of people who are porters for evil, and their entire thing is they steal your deliveries because they love the dopamine hit of finishing the other people's jobs. And if you find yourself, if you resonate at all with that, what I found at an early time in the industry is I was working really hard, not because anyone was expecting me to do it, but just because I just kind of got addicted to that feeling of constant progress. And so the only way that I broke out of that was having kids. So my advice to all of you is have kids.
Let's see. Yeah, boundaries are important, but I also try to take time away to spend time with my friends and do hobbies that I love. Like recently, I've been getting back into cosplay and spending at least a little time every night, working on my wig, which I'm not very good at, and playing games myself, watching shows that I love and interacting with fandoms that I love. Yeah, I try to take time to myself to do things that I love outside of work. Yeah.
One thing that gets lost in work-life balance, it's not necessarily just the amount of hours you work, like if you work 40 hours a week or 45, but it's also the expectation and pressures that you put on people while they're at the office that extend beyond it, that I think you need to take into account. And as a producer, I make it a point to make sure I am cognizant of my teams and what they're doing. So for example, if I see someone check in something at 10 p.m., I may have to talk to them the next morning. I'm not their boss. I'm not going to reprimand them, but I'm going to talk to them and be like, hey, you don't want to do this. Not that you aren't passionate about it. Passion's good, right? But if you show that you are willing to do this right now, those above you may begin to expect that, and expectation will continue to cascade, and then you get yourself in a bad situation. But for myself, like people have said, like when it gets on normal days at 6 o'clock, I try and log out. And yeah, I have producer mind, so I check in Slack every now and then. But in general, I try and make that bifurcation between my life. I know it's harder when you're working from home, but you can do it. But I feel more responsible for ensuring that my teams have a better work-life balance. Because if I fail there, then again, that failure cascades down to a lot of different places.
So I have a confession to make. For the first time in about 30 years, I'm actually a student. I'm taking a class on the side. And one of the things that probably my family also recognized as well is, and it hit me because it took me back to when I was a student, that I never have poured in more hours in passion on my own than in this class. And it was a real important realization of how that carries forward in folks' personalities, regardless of whether it's for a job or something that you're really passionate about. And that's particularly true for in the gaming industry, because it is something that most everyone goes into because they're really excited and passionate about. And the temptation is to kind of pour your heart and soul, much like you do in a class, into things. And it can mean, even with the right intentions, I think everyone on the panel has spoken really eloquently about this, that it can be hard to know when do I turn it off? When do I find that balance? And as someone who runs teams, that's something we've often found and looked at, is the notion of burnout or work-life balance is actually less driven by the team goals or the needs, and more by individuals who feel that they have a lot to do and don't know when to stop. And that became really actually highlighted during the pandemic when everyone was working from home. You saw these two different groups of folks really emerge. You saw individuals that often were either single or didn't have families, or kind of what I'd say external factors telling them to stop burning out, because they were working. There was no I'm leaving work. It was like work and home were all blended together, and we saw this huge spike in people really burning out. And so we had to spend a lot of time talking with folks about, hey, you should turn off your Slack, or stop checking your email, or please don't do a check-in late, or let's do some sort of cool down ritual that gives everyone that same feeling like they are leaving work. And so from a team perspective, we really emphasized that a lot. And then we had other folks that did have a lot of external pressure and were feeling burnout from the fact that I have 5,000 things competing for my attention. How am I going to get my work done? And now I'm doing my work alongside my home life at the same time. And for those folks, we needed to find ways to give them focus time where they weren't also having overloaded with meetings, or knew that they could, if necessary, have some cool down time to get that balance. So to kind of take it to a conclusion, I think it's really important as you go into the industry to give yourself permission to always put your personal and work life in total balance. That every company should have the right intention to uphold that, but often need to collaborate with you. And if you find you're at a place where that's not possible, I encourage you, don't just accept it. It's very important to be successful over time. I've been at plenty of studios where you call it crunch or working extended hours, where to get a project through a certain period, you do unlock that passion, but it's not sustainable and it's not warranted. And the industry has learned a lot of tough lessons through that. So please know that it's not this expectation, oh, if you're gonna get a job in games, you're gonna have to give up your personal life or work it extraordinarily hard. That is not true at all, and there are plenty of companies out there that have learned the positive lessons. So please, I urge you, don't just assume that that's a sacrifice you have to give. Hold on to that dearly.
100%.
Yeah, no, that's some like great advice. I even wrote here, no Discord after 6:30 and no Discord at 4 a.m. No, like you guys talking about basically doing like stuff after work hours. I really relate to that. I'm actually the problem, but like it is super hard to shut down and like basically give yourself that division. And I it's good to know that like you guys have all gone through that. And I'm sure as students, like we know that issue. It's like, oh, we have a job, we have school, so much family, it's like friends, so overwhelming. So I think that was really some really great advice. So our next question is, from your experience, like what does it feel like working at a company of this scale? So Riot Games is obviously one of the largest gaming companies. It's the company everyone wants to go to. And then like what does it mean for you to be working at a company of this scale?
I'll try to be briefer than my previous answers. I've worked the whole gamut. I've worked in small startups, indie studios. I've worked in first party development. I've worked in middle-sized studios, and worked at Riot, which is a really interesting structure because it's kind of a rolled up developer and publisher, kind of all in one. And so to me, that was what was exciting about working in a company of this kind of scale is you're just surrounded by so much talent and passion and excitement that is always just a fingertip away from being available to you. And so working at a large company, but particularly at Riot, working at scale, yes, it can be daunting with so many things going on, but it also you just feel this greater sense of a community and a mission and a purpose that unlocks your individual work. And Riot actually does a really good job of finding a balance between kind of your team or your initiatives focus work and then providing how it fits into the larger mission. And I think if it didn't have these larger value system or mission orientation to kind of bind it, it would feel like a large kind of corporate entity and you'd feel a bit lost. But what's really wonderful is every single person up here, I'm highly confident, could tell you exactly why Riot exists and what our mission is for and what our values are. And that can make working at a large company like Riot feel extremely powerful.
Riot feels different. The vast majority of my experience has been at these big companies, Sony, Bethesda, stuff like that, Blizzard. But even within that echelon, like, it just feels different. Campus is gorgeous, or LA campus, I don't know the other ones. So that has its own perks with it. But yeah, it definitely feels like there's a million moving parts, and trying to understand even a fraction of it is folly. And that's okay, right? Because they build out communities in even the own little game pods. So it different. I wish I had a better answer. It's just, you can tell, even coming from somewhere like Blizzard to here, like, there's just a different feel, and there is a desire to go towards a vision or a goal, which is pretty awesome.
I would say the cool thing about Riot is they encourage you, and even if that means that you fail, and if you fail, no one's gonna be mad or anything. They'll just pick you back up, and you learn from it, and you step back up to the plate, which is nice. There's no fear of like repercussions, or so you truly get to actually learn, which is something that I haven't had before. And just working with so many, like, as you said, talented people. Like, we were just talking in the green room, like, I don't think any of us knew each other before. So you're constantly meeting people all the time that are just really cool.
Yeah, we just met each other, and we both have Sailor Moon shoes and both love old school anime. We're both like
Yep.
old weebs, you call ourselves.
Yes.
And I think that's important context to have, because outside of the work, the social aspect of working at Riot is fucking dope, like, to put it plainly. It's the only analogy I can have is when I go to things like Anime Expo or Penny Arcade Expo or Comic-Con, you're surrounded by all of these people who are somehow related to the thing that you love, the thing that you're really passionate about. And I found my times on campus playing Smash till like 11 or 12 o'clock at night, or I just sit down and play. We have an arcade there in the LA campus, again.
We have a DDR club too.
Yeah, DDR Club, exactly, yeah. Playing Marvel 2 with just random people who happen to be working on 2XKO, and so yeah, the work's scary. It's a lot of pressure. You're trying to make the best things and the best games in the industry, but socially, you're just surrounded by really cool people who love the same stuff you love, which I haven't been able to replicate that at other places before this.
I think like working for like a really big company, like one of the tougher parts, I guess, would be like the level of decision making that happens. Like a company is so big and so many choices get made that like at some point you just have to lean on trust with a lot of people. You just have to learn how to just trust people that they're going to make the right decisions for whatever area that they're at. I feel pretty lucky at Riot because I feel like a lot of the folks that I work with make really good decisions and I stand behind them. One really cool thing about working for a big company, especially for like Riot, is whenever you do anything or whenever you launch anything, it gets patched to millions of players, and that's like kind of crazy. Because like when I was in high school playing League, like to imagine that like, oh, this is eventually going to go out to like 1 million people, like you could just essentially press a button and so many people around the world can see your work is kind of crazy. It's very, very cool.
So I'm almost 2 years in at Riot, and I feel like I'm finally, my mind is finally able to wrap around how big this company is. when I joined Riot back 2 summers ago, nephews, cousins that I never really talked to before were reaching out to me for gun buddies for their friends. And we started playing Valorant together, and that has never happened to me before. Yeah, and when I play Valorant now, my in-game name is Riot Joel, and because it's just the easiest thing that I could come up with. And people will recognize me for patch notes, and that's still like crazy to me that people care about this stuff. Oh, have you?
Yeah, thank you so much for your experiences and letting us know what it's like living at Riot, this big company. Now we wanted to open up the questions to the floor for our Q&A panel. If any of you have any of these questions, for this panel, we have a microphone right here. Feel free to ask any questions if you're curious about their specific jobs or just any questions to the panel in general. Feel free to go up and ask.
And then after this panel, you are free to talk to the right people outside in the PC Theater lobby. So that will happen as well. But please feel free to line up right here where we have one of our officers.
Oh, there it is. I've been focusing a lot on production, but now I'm also getting into a lot of the business side of the video game industry. And I know in the field, those two positions usually have a push and a pull. But career-wise, do you think those two things go hand in hand, or are they at odds?
I'll just immediately say it is an industry, it is a business, and at the end, it's really easy to kind of try to feel like they should be separate, but they're not. I think Riot's perspective is really to me really personally amazing. What drew me to the company, just because it really did not come across as we are here as a business first and foremost, but we are here for players, and has built its business off of building trust with its players. And so I think to kind of answer your question, there is always this delicate balancing act of remembering that this is a business and it needs to be sustainable. But the kind of way in which your business can be successful is not necessarily driven by how many dollars can we kind of accrue over a particular thing, but on how we believe we can build the best experiences in a way that our players value and can engage with and love, but also make a sustainable business. So as someone interested in that, I believe that's the kind of the right lens you have to take in mind is, at the end of the day, if you want to make games as a business, you need to have both aspects.
Yeah, and like for your skill set, it's never bad to know more. So
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
yeah.
Hello. What about the gaming industry is different than you may have anticipated or expected before you got involved into it?
There's like just so much that happens behind the curtain that players have no clue about. Like the replay system that we're working on right now. It's taking a really long time because it's really hard to make. And we understand, we know that you all are waiting for a replay system, and eventually it might come, it might not come, but we're working on it. Oh my God, sorry, I forgot the question. Okay. Yes, that's
What's
my
something
answer.
that's different?
Sorry.
Yeah, what's unanticipated that you experienced that you didn't expect in the industry?
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, like
Yeah, that's
there's
good.
so much that goes on behind the curtains that players don't see, and like all the stuff that you want out of Valorant, we're working on, we're looking at, we're reading all of your comments and stuff. Like nothing that you say into the ether just disappears. We're like actively working on the stuff that you care about.
One thing I could speak to, on the negative side of things, the one thing that surprised me in the industry that I didn't expect to be there was a significant amount of gatekeeping, especially from tastemakers in general. And that's from representation and identity and so many other things. But additionally, just the type of games that people value. I spent a good chunk of my time working on mobile games, and when I was interviewing after that for console and PC games, it was like almost being discredited that I found any value in mobile games. Thankfully, that's time has passed, but there is still gatekeeping everywhere. So if your idea is jumping into the industry, it's one thing to be prepped for, that you might find yourself devalued in something. So find a way to value yourself or the right group of people.
To piggyback off of that, QA especially, I feel like maybe is undervalued a lot and underrepresented, because a good QA team could like make or break a game.
I'll just add, making games is really, really hard.
Oh, I was gonna say
And and you realize the bar is really high for expectations for something that is deserving to go out to players. And so you spend an extraordinarily large amount of time failing and trying to figure out how to make the right thing. And oftentimes we don't get it right. And then learning how to listen to your community and improve and make things better. But I'd say that's the thing that in going into games, that was a real lesson, particularly before something goes to players, you're just really battling to understand what it will really take to get there.
I'm shocked that any game ever gets made.
That's true. Yeah.
That's
Straight
true.
up.
That's true.
It is constantly surprising.
Lord, thanks, guys.
Hello. This question is for anybody who has experience at other companies in this industry. You guys mentioned that Riot is so nice and supportive and cohesive. Do you find that consistent across the industry at other companies, or is that unique to Riot, do you think? I saw that smile.
Yeah, I don't think we can name any companies just for our own resumes, but I'll say that it is not consistent. But the industry at large has gotten better. I think that's due to the fact that the competition, the talent has just gotten so much significantly more talented that employers have to put themselves in a position to become appealing to people applying to that. But yeah, Riot still is a little bit of a beacon. There's, at least in my experience, my personal anecdotal subjective experience, they're standing alone in a lot of ways.
I'd say like the investing in people and their mental health and all that stuff is not unique, but the degree to which Riot invest in it, that is unique.
Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you guys for what you do, just in general, making great games. But I've a question. How do you balance between the like top 1% of the community and then the other 99% whenever it comes to like balancing between different games?
Do you mean like competitive balance?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't.
See, we're all producers. We don't really balance.
Yeah. I mean, I can try to answer because I've had those conversations, but I don't think that's within any of our specific wheelhouses. But I mean, in general, I would think I'd be safe saying that you want to balance the game for the most amount of people. That doesn't mean that just because you're great at the game that you get a lower experience. But yeah, I think I don't speak for anyone up here, but maybe that's the most I would say for my position.
Just to kind of connect on why making games is hard. This is like a very representative problem space of how do you make, particularly, Riot makes a lot of competitive, very competitive multiplayer games. How do you make a game that can be beloved by the most competitive, sweaty players out there, but also embraced by players who just want to go and have a good time? And so there's a lot of trade-offs and thought that go into that. And it's one reason why Riot has really indexed on very regular, patch cadence and updates to our games, just because it is a never-ending process.
And Riot actually chooses the harder path. Like, there's nothing stopping, like for League, for example, right? There's nothing stopping them from having two different balance cycles, one for pro, one for not. But they don't because it doesn't really fit with the vision for the game, right? So Riot actually takes the harder position on that. Apologies, we can't answer your question more.
I can do a little bit of projection. So one of the things that we often find ourselves as producers is we work hand in hand with game directors or product owners who are responsible for prioritizing all of the things that we could do in order to serve the players, right? And traditionally, what you see in those conversations is they will cohort players into sections and then make sure each one of those sections are being served, right? So for the 1% sweaty player, or the 99% casual, or the person who only loves Yumi and they just main Yumi forever, right? Like they make sure that those people get served and they get represented in the conversations. I think success really comes from building a team of people who have voices who also align with all of those cohorts so that you can go seek out your peers and making sure you're serving those people.
Oh. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Hello, not a Yumi main, but I wanted to ask the question, like when you all started as producers, would you say there were any skill sets or kind of perspectives that you didn't expect to learn, or something you picked up along the way, like now, or like, you know, leading up to now compared to like when you started? Yeah, were there any like skills that you didn't expect to learn that like ended up playing like a critical part in like your success as a producer?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I think I have one for this. Learning to understand people better is really, really important. Like actually sitting down and when you're having a conversation, like really understanding where someone's coming from. Because like a lot of what you're gonna be doing, like in the games industry, like when like during an actual job, is like working with other people, making things together. And there is like a tendency to like, you can drift away from like what other people like are envisioning, but learning how just like to come together, understand what people are saying and like work together in that way is super, super important. And also going hand in hand with that is just be curious. Just always be curious, ask questions, try to understand things.
So I'm not an engineer, but I work a lot with engineers. And so I thought it important to learn their processes. So so that way I knew what was going through their mind when they came to me with questions. So I actually went out and got a certification for Scrum Master. And so I feel like I'm constantly learning. That's a skill set. So I'm constantly learning from other teams and trying to understand how they're approaching problems so that way we can work together to find good solutions.
One very specific answer. Localization. For some reason, producers always get localization, and oftentimes, like, we have to import these CSVs into the product. Like, so we learned this really very specific pipeline for putting various strings out. This is useful to nobody, but that's something I did not expect to learn.
I'll add on two fronts. One is, as someone who came from a craft discipline, an art discipline, it gives me a lot of street cred whenever I talk like to the artists. So invest some time to just familiarize yourself with understanding how some of the kind of craft-oriented disciplines work. I think, as Nikki mentioned, like knowing how engineers work is super helpful in the way you engage. But to me, the most important skill for producers is the soft skills that have been mentioned, whether it's the communication, the collaboration, the bringing people together, knowing how to problem solve either with empathy or decision-making structures. A number one thing I hear is, boy, it's really hard to find people with good soft skills. And so I really believe that's the key to being a good producer is if you have good soft skills, you will likely be set up for success.
Yeah. Soft skills are the soft skills. Those are harder to teach. Like those just kind of have to pick those up as you go across. Like I always delineate between like hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills being, I don't know, how well do you use Jira and how well can you track time and all that stuff, which is incredibly important. But I can generally teach you how to do that. But the soft skills he's talking about, like those are pretty tough to teach. You kind of have to experience them firsthand, and you actually have to care. I think that's the thing. Like you have to care about the people on your team. You actually have to care about their job, what they're doing, their lives. Like I always say that my mantra is that I care more for the rows than the columns. Like if you look at a spreadsheet, generally names are on a row and dates and all that are on a column. So it's my philosophy that if you don't invest in your rows, your people, it doesn't really matter what your columns say. It doesn't really matter what your dates or milestones are if you don't have people that want to work and are healthy enough to work.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Rachel. I'm not sure if any of you guys work in art or design, because my question is more tailored to that. But I was wondering, like, when looking at a portfolio, is it better to like see one focused skill that someone is honing down, or is it better to have a variety of skills that's shown in a portfolio?
So the team that I work on, I'm not an artist myself, but I work on a concept art team. And I would say very specifically for concept art, we actually like to see a lot of different skills. It's not about just like how well you can draw, but it's more of like how well can you like take an idea and design around that. So it might not be super important that you can like ultra render, but like maybe you're working on illustrations or that is super important. So to try to answer your question, like it is a lot of different skills there. But if you do have something that you are focusing on with your craft, you could hone in on it. But I think it is good to have like a good spread of different art skills.
I'll add, because I was once upon a time did a lot of like production art management as well and looked at a lot of portfolios. I would say keep in mind that almost anyone can replicate like what a tutorial can do or be proficient in something that's highly repetitive. Find something that kind of stands out, that shows some personality or your ability to solve a problem in a clever, unique way. And that can mean breaking down the kind of the art problem in a way that shows that you understand what are the core reasons for it. Or it can mean, you know, instead of an animated walk cycle that shows all the right technical steps, it shows some kind of interesting flair or personality that really kind of showcases. And to me, those are the reels in portfolios that always stand out.
Just one more thing that I'd add. Being hyper-specific also can be valuable. It might make it hard for you to find a job at a generic studio or be able to apply to a bunch of places. But in some interview panels that I've been a part of, or specifically I remember we hired, when I worked at Psyonix on Rocket League, we hired a fan video editor who would specifically edit all the RLCS montages into dope segments, and eventually we needed that, and he reached out to us, and then we hired him, and he was very, very good at that, and our community loved that. So if you hyper invest and there is an opportunity to place, it might be a strength, but if you're trying to make mass appeal, there could be some challenges there for sure.
Thank you.
So my question is mostly targeted towards James, but if anyone else can like chime in, that'd be cool. So I guess for Valorant specifically, what led to the like decision in like using Unreal Engine 4 as opposed to something in-house like for League or any of the other Riot projects?
So I wasn't at Valorant at the beginning of development of it, but I mean, I've heard stories, and my understanding, and it's just that using Unreal made sense because it's probably easier to find people who know how to use Unreal. And I know, and no offense to League, but they've run into issues with their system because it's very, let's say, unique, which we don't generally have on Valorant. So I can't necessarily explain, oh, this was the decision making, but as someone who's been in the rooms that understands, like, oh, you know, I've hired people before at other studios, being able to work with Unreal is pretty ubiquitous across the industry.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, this is a little bit more simple question, but going down the line, what is your favorite video game? Of course, besides Valorant and League.
Start this way.
There you go.
So the question, favorite video game? Oh God, impossible. But I'll just say the games I'm playing now, I'll just go with the games that I'm excited now. I'm a diehard Destiny 2 player, so I'm really excited. Final Shape is coming out next week. Doing all my prep right now. Of course, during the downtime, I've been playing a lot of Helldivers as well, but I also play a lot of other games. I've been playing Balatro quite a bit, which is this cool roguelike poker game. Yeah, I'd say I'll leave it at that.
My 3 favorite games are Bloodborne, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Mass Effect 2.
I would have to say probably one of my more cherished games is the original Pokemon Red. I was in middle school and it was a very fun summer. But some of my favorites I think are Phoenix Wright and Persona 5, which I'm a little biased because I QA'd Royal. And Currently, I'm playing a little bit obsessed with Weathering Waves, and I just got back into
Nice.
Genshin.
Depending on what day you ask me, I change the answer, but it's usually a toss-up between Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid 3, Shadow of the Colossus, or Monster Hunter.
I think I have almost the same answer of like it changes constantly. Like last week, today, in 2 days will probably be a little bit different, but they all are generally in like the same like orbit, so to speak. But I think one of my favorite games is Life is Strange. Love that game. It's a beautiful game. Go play it if you haven't played it. And I also really like Crash Bandicoot. That was like one of the first games I ever played.
Nice.
There is a game that is finally out of early access that is like Minecraft, but better and in 2D, and it's called Core Keeper.
Core Keeper's great. Yeah, I love that game.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. That concludes our Q&A panel. Please give a big round of applause for our panelists. And yeah, we want to thank you so much for your time and your insights. And for all our audience who are eager to talk to them or ask them questions that are, if you're too shy to ask them in a microphone, we understand. Some of them, not guaranteed, but some of them may stay around in the lobby, so look out for that. But yeah, thank you so much once again.
Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. Who else would leave this with me?
I'm taking it.